Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Snackbox. Hope you all are having an amazing start to the week, guys. We have some news regarding the CvC progressive summoning events. Clan vs. Clan tournament will start in about 21 hours, and we will have some nice progressive events for that. So this Tuesday, January the 13th, we're planning to launch a progressive chance event, giving you at least 15x chance to summon the champions of your choice from the selected pool from Ancient Primal Sacreds and Void Shards. Same thing for Wednesday. Now for Tuesday, there will be Bannerlord champions, and then for Wednesday, there will be Knights Revenant champions. Now on Tuesday, we're starting off with the Bannerlord champions, and the first in slot is the Unity champion, Acelin, the stalwart, absolutely amazing Unity champion for Bannerlords posts in Siege. He can be super effective and useful, but just in general, if you pair him with Bannerlord's champions like Marichka and Taras, he's very, very annoying to deal with. Definitely one of the better Unity champions if you have the meta champions out of this faction, but also if not, he can be very helpful in different areas. Then next we have an assassin, Edward Canway. This is actually my favorite design out of all of them. Now his skill set is more PvP orientated, as he ignores shield, stone skin, block damage on his A3, also plays as a block revive, so that's quite helpful if you don't have a lot of options to get rid of stone skin or hit through it or for block damage. He can be quite good. Also on top of that, he has a 2-hitter AoE attack on an A2, which is definitely pretty unique skill. The first hit steals all buffs. The second hit has a 100% chance if booked to place sleep. So yeah, he's definitely a little bit of a sheep magnet here for Polymorph if you plan on using him in PvP or whatever. But I think his A1 is very powerful because it's a free hitter, and every hit decreases the target's turn meter by 15%, by 25% instead if the attack is critical. This cannot be resisted if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. 75% turn meter reduction on the A1 if he's under Veil is very, very powerful. And then he has a debuff that not a lot of champions have. It's pretty new, and that's Ensnare. And what Ensnare does is that it's decreasing the turn meter fill of enemy champions. So you basically slow them down. Let me find it real quick. So here you can see there's a small version and a big version of Ensnare. Any turn meter increase effects received by a champion with the Ensnare debuff will be reduced by 50%. That's the small version probably, and 100% is the big version. And he's placing the big version every time he hits a champion. So again, another debuff that might get you polymorphed, okay? Another thing that I want to point out regarding these progressive events with assassins, most likely, most of them will be guaranteed in some way or form in, events and tournaments, Heroes Pass, Deck of Fate, maybe you have to win a Champ Chase tournament. All of that can be true, so going for progressive events is not really the best way to do this because the chances are not increased to get a legendary champion. The chances are pretty much the same, and also the chance that you hit that selected champion is not as high as you would think it would be. So the chance is still relatively low to get him, and it might cost you more than what you would have to spend or invest in terms of shards to get this champion from a guaranteed event or tournament. Then we have Staltus Dragonbane. Really solid defense-based nuker. He can definitely smack. He's self-buffing. That's good. Plays decreased speed. Has a stun on the A2. A 2-hitter. Not bad. Decreasing turn meter on A1. And he's reflecting, weaken poisons, and decrease defense with his passive. I'll still use him in Faction Wars. Heart, for example. He's really good, but got kind of power crap. There are definitely better defense options. But for the Bannerlords, not bad to have. Then we have Kaja, support type champion. She's the partner of Timit, which is also part of this progressive event. They have a nice synergy. You cannot decrease her turn meter if she's paired with Timit. She has this turn meter fill, and cleanse if Timit is on the same team with block debuffs. She can heal herself and Timit with her A1, and then she has this AoE revive. And if you revive Timit with this, then he's instantly using his AoE attack. This one right here, before attacking, he's increasing his accuracy and then placing True Fear. He's HP based, so in general very tanky. He can actually hit pretty good. He does decent damage. He has control. He can strip buffs, and he heals with the A1 as well. So both together are pretty solid, but you kind of have to have a decent soul, for the extra stats, so they can, perform well. Especially in Faction Wars Hard, that's where I mainly use them. I don't use them in PvP. At some point, they were relatively decent, but right now, I don't really think they would be very good. So, yeah, kind of lackluster, this duo. There are definitely better ones like, Tarichka, and they can definitely not keep up with them. And then we have, one of the best meta champions for Hydra and Chimera, Titus Blackplume, which was a fusion recently, and he pretty much changed the game. We got the shield comps back, and yeah, he's been a massive influence on Hydra especially, but also Chimera. So if you don't have a Titus, you might want to get one. Next in line is Baron. Got kind of power crap, is not used that often anymore, but he can, for example, one-shot bosses with his splash damage if you have a high soul. Right here, you can see it on an A1. Attacks one enemy, will attack all remaining enemies with any surplus damage if the target is killed. And this can be a huge hit, huge damage output. And a lot of people use that for like speed running dungeons, especially the event dungeon right now. And then last but not least, we have Raglin. Raglin has been in the game for a very long time, got a rebalance recently, and is pretty solid now. Has a 3-turn cooldown on her revive. She revives with 100% turn meter and also decreases the cooldowns of all the revived allies' skills by 3 turns. And that is absolutely amazing. Also, she's immune to block active skills, so it's very hard to control her. She can cleanse, has an increased accuracy and increased attack buff. And also, she fills the turn meter of 3 random allies by 15%. So in general, she's a very good reviver. Also good for Chimera. She provides 2 buffs. Increase accuracy, increase attack, and she can revive, okay? 2 buffs on a reviver is very solid, as well as turn meter fill. Very good. But not only good for Chimera, also for PvP. Alright, then we have the Knights Revenant. I'm gonna start off with the Unity champion, and that is Losan. He is very, very good, and I think he's a little bit underestimated, I would say. Obviously, the situation where he's the most powerful is in like siege posts, Knights Revenant siege posts. He has a very nice passive where he decreases the death ignore effects against him by 100%, so you cannot ignore his defense. When he's attacked, he has a chance to place True Fear, and also he has a chance of 20% to get an instant turn. Besides the Unity effects, he also places block damage on himself every time he loses 25% or more HP from a single hit. So he can be very tanky, very hard to kill, also very annoying with block damage, True Fear. He gets turns eventually if he gets attacked. So he's very, very powerful, especially in Knights Revenant siege posts. He can balance the HP of the enemies as well as the HP of the allies. So there's that. If you get one target low, you can get everyone low with this skill. Kind of an amazing skill. He has the A1 where he places a weaken. Not bad, but also nothing crazy. And then his A3. This attacks one enemy before attacking, transfers all debuffs from this champion to the target, and heals this champion by 10% of their max HP. Heals by an additional 10% for each debuff transferred. Will always use this skill instead of the default skill when counter-attacking. Very interesting part here. Before attacking, also removes all buffs from the target enemy. This effect cannot be resisted if the target has attacked this champion before this turn. 2 faction allies will attack all remaining enemies with less than 30% HP. This attack will ignore 100% of each target's defense and cannot be critical. With 3 faction allies, this skill deals 100% more damage to enemies who have attacked this champion before this turn. So yeah, he can be very annoying, very tanky, hard to kill, but also can deal a lot of damage. He's balancing HP, very underrated Unity champion. Next in line is a relatively new reviver. She has an AoE revive, which is very good. Also decreases the cooldown of all enemy skills by 2 turns. And also decreases the cooldown of all revived allies by 1 turn, which helps definitely. She has Weaken on the A1, a free hitter, not bad. The A2 is a buff strip with block buffs and decreased defense. And then she has Pain Link on her passive. Now, unfortunately, for Chimera, for example, the normal Pain Link is not that great. It definitely helps a little bit, but it's not really super impactful compared to like Gizmac's Pain Link, which can do the Reflect trial on his own. Her Pain Link doesn't really help that much. But she's a reviver, an AoE reviver. She can decrease the cooldowns by 1 turn if she revives. And then she also has 3 debuffs, which are very important. Decrease defense, weaken, and block buffs. This is a very, very solid option for Chimera. But just in general, a great reviver. Then we have another reviver, and we can't have a Knights Revenant progressive event without Ankora, which was a fusion. And she's the partner of Narses. That's a very strong duo still to this day. I use her still in Faction Wars Hard, for example, and occasionally in Live Arena. She has a very nice passive, which whenever an enemy tries to place Fear, True Fear Freeze, Provoke, Sleep, Stun, or Petrification on the ally with the highest crit damage, she transfers those debuffs to her instead, which kind of makes it impossible for the enemy to control my highest crit damage champion. Okay, so that is a very, very strong passive and can definitely win you games. On top of that, she has a revive, obviously, and a cleanse with a shield buff and strengthen if Narses is on the same team, and then she fills the turn meter of all allies by 10%. She's also an all-battle speed aura, which is quite nice. So yeah, still to this day, a very good reviver. Narses is also on the list for the Void Legendary Champions. HP based, got a little bit power crap, but he has a block revive, but it's conditional. The target has to have 3 or more buffs. Then he has an AoE attack, which ignores 25% of the target's defense and places an extra hit on targets under shield or strengthen buffs. Very, very nice. But the most powerful thing about this champion is that his skills will ignore shield and strengthen buffs. So whoever has shield on, he's a straight counter for that. He's just ignoring it and placing an extra attack with his AoE. But back to the non-voids, we have Teodor, one of the best poison activation champions in the game. He can solo dungeons. He can get you a lot of mythical mats if you have him. He places decreased speed on the A1. Poisons and poison sensitivity on the A2. Also places increased speed. And then he activates poisons and an HP burn with the A3 and is placing a weaken with his A3 as well. Okay, so that's a lot of buffs and debuffs that he does. On top of that, his passive is nice to have. This champion's resistance is increased by 5 for each poison debuff. On the enemy team, it's not that great. It doesn't really matter that much. The most important part is that he's placing poisons and activating them, as well as placing those other buffs and debuffs. So yeah, very helpful for Chimera, enables a lot of comps, and yeah, still a great champion to this day. Now, another champion from the Assassin's Creed collab. As you can see, he's tagged as an event champion. Now, this champion can be only summoned through these, progressive events during this collab, but afterwards, you will be able to summon him. That's the difference. He's not an IP champion like the other assassins, but he's part of the collab. So he won't be time limited, okay? He's the current event dungeon boss, so you might have faced him already, and maybe you know what he does, at least a little bit. Now, he's a very interesting champion, let's start off with A1. So the A1 places a block active skill debuff for 2 turns. You have a 100% chance if booked. Steals 5% of the target's turn meter for each buff on them. This can be very, very strong in Arena. Shuzan has a block active skills on the A1 as well. And sometimes it can definitely win you games, okay? Now let's go on with A3 because that's the natural turn order, how it would go. So basically, you place a 50% increase accuracy buff for 2 turns and 1 intercept stack on all allies. Also fills turn meter of all allies by 25%. So you buff the increase accuracy, you put up the intercept stack, which makes sure that your champions cannot be sheeped, stunned, frozen, or whatever. And then you fill the turn meter by 25%. Okay, 25% is relatively high. The highest turn meter fill we have for AoE skills is 30%. So 25 is very close to that. And then he gets an extra turn, okay? After the extra turn, you can use the A2. Now you already buffed up his accuracy. Now he can strip buffs. Removes all buffs from all enemies. Has a 100% chance of placing Ensnare, which we talked about earlier, on all enemies for 2 turns. This debuff will ignore any block debuffs on enemies under 3 or more buffs. So where is this good? Now you also decrease turn meter, but where is this useful? Basically, you can use him for bomb champions, for example, right? With the intercept stack, you maybe can build your bomb champion without pinpoint because you're already providing the intercept. Also, you bring the increased accuracy, which is very powerful. There are a lot of high resistance builds out there. And then you also are able to strip down the block debuffs from immunity sets, for example, or block damage if it's not protected. So this works very well together, but you can also use him just to increase the accuracy of a Fabian, for example, or any other champion that can lock out the enemy team or control them. So yeah, very, very strong skills and very nice synergy because of this extra turn. Okay, the increased accuracy, intercept buff, turn meter fill into a buff strip, and then placing Ensnare and also decreasing the enemy turn meter. You can strip Stone Skin with this if you're lucky and then decrease the turn meter. So this can definitely make sure that you go first. On top of that, he has a 24% speed aura in all battles, which is relatively high. For Arena, the highest aura we have for Void champions only is the one from Odin. And then without restriction for affinities, it's 33% from Carnage. So 24 is relatively high. But then you also have this passive where your allies receive 25% less damage from enemies under block damage, unkillable Veil, perfect Veil, Stone Skin. So we all know there's a Predator, for example, with Veil that is relatively annoying. So he will deal 25% less damage. Anybody that puts up block damage, a nice Sigfrund. So there are a lot of damage dealers that have these buffs and they will deal 25% less damage. Also, on top of that, each time an enemy receives a buff, is healed, or has their turn meter filled, has a 50% chance to decrease the duration of all their buffs by 1 turn. So another buff strip, so to say. This can only occur once per skill and once per target. If there are multiple champions on the team with this skill, only one will activate. So yeah, very, very amazing passive, if you ask me. Decreasing the enemy damage and also kind of a budget buff strip. So this can definitely be very powerful in the arena. That's where I mostly see him. But most of the time, champions that perform well in arena also perform very well in PvE content. So yeah, very strong Void legendary champion. I think that he will be available through winning a Champ Chase tournament. That's what I'm thinking, speculating. We don't have info on that yet, so anything can happen, but that's my speculation. Then we have one of the most interesting champions in the entire game, and that is Hegemon. Hegemon doesn't really care about speed. He is always going first, okay? And that means you can build him with a lot of damage and make sure to give your enemy team in live arena a very, very bad time. You maybe faced him in the event dungeon or in live arena already. He's actually a very, very old champion and became relatively irrelevant at some point. He was definitely meta at first, then he became irrelevant, and now he's back again. And the reason why I'm saying that is because there's a blessing that gives you additional damage when you hit Stone Skin, and that is cracking roots. So if you have a 6-star blessing on him, and even with a 5-star blessing, it still works. So with a 6-star blessing, you increase the damage inflicted to Stone Skin shields by 100%, and he can theoretically be your Stone Skin remover, okay? So with the damage alone, sometimes he hits through Stone Skin on relatively squishy targets, like a Carnage, for example. He can hit through it, destroy it, and kill Carnage as well. So it depends on how much damage you can stack on him with a Cat's Gaze, a 6-star Blessing, Cracking Roots, 6-piece Merciless, and Zeal, and a lot of attack, a lot of crit damage. You can definitely take out squishier targets. And yeah, very, very powerful with this AoE attack in combination with his always going first passive. All right, guys, so we covered every champion. Now, the question is, who should you go for? I mean, it depends on if you are free to play or a spender. Now, as a free to play player, I would definitely skip all of these progressive events and save your shards for guaranteed events. Okay, that's what I would do. But if you're a spender, I would most likely go for either one of the Unity champions. They are very interesting and only available through progressive events, or Pontiff Augustine, because he will be most likely the reward for winning a Champ Chase tournament. And if you are able to get him from this progressive event, you can totally skip that Champ Chase tournament, right? So it might be a little bit cheaper to go for this progressive instead of trying to win a Champ Chase tournament. If you hit a hard group, if you have someone in there that is, wailing completely, then the chance is relatively low that you get him from there, right? So yeah, it depends. I think the Unity champions and Pontiff Augustine are definitely the best in slot here if you want to go for any of them. But in general, I wouldn't go very hard right now because we know we have events and tournaments coming up where we might get assassins that are time limited. I know a lot of people don't think they are good, but the reason for that is because they are comparing them to the Ninja Turtles, which have been absolutely amazing and took the bar very high, and now everybody's expecting the assassins to do the same thing, which is not the case. This is a completely different story here with those champions. They're not a full team and don't have the same synergy that the Turtles have, so they won't perform as well as the Turtles did in combination. So in general, I would say they have their niche uses where they shine. They have unique debuffs and unique kits, and they perform the best individually. I think some of them have really, really high potential for Chimera, like him, Bayek. And he's another Void Legendary champion that might be the candidate for winning a Champ Chase tournament. Maybe there will be 2 Champ Chase tournaments that you need to win to get either of those champions, Pontiff or Bayek, who knows. But he, for example, he places Leech, decrease accuracy, decrease resistance. That is kind of what Klazak does on his A2 without the enemy max HP damage. Then he has increased accuracy, increased defense, and perfect veil. So yeah, he's providing a lot of buffs, a lot of debuffs that are needed to complete trials, which enable mythical mats. And I can't stress enough how impactful mythical relics are. So the value of a champion increases even if he's not that great anywhere else. Because realistically, a mythical relic can change your account, can be much more impactful than having an insane champion, and can also be much more impactful than having insane gear. So that's why I think some of these champions are insanely good and valuable, even if they can't solo dungeons or, beat every type of content or deal the most damage. That is not always what champions need to do. So yeah, guys, let me know in the comments below if you are going to pull shards for this progressive event. Like I said, none of this is super necessary. I would save my shards if you don't have many for upcoming events and tournaments where you can get guaranteed champions. That's what I'm gonna do. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please hit the like button. It really goes a long way. Also subscribe to the channel if you want to see more raid content. The YouTube algorithm's gonna suggest you a video that you might like right here, and see you in the next one.